All right, this is a video from my Block 1 and Block 4 biology classes. Obviously, this is your favorite teacher, Mr. Smirchna, and as you can tell by the fact that I'm not sitting in the chair, I'm probably not at school today. I had stayed home, planned on being home Friday to take Simi to her appointment, and Thursday night I started feeling pretty bad, and it's pretty ironic we're starting prokaryotic cells and bacteria and viruses because then I went to urgent care on Friday night and it turns out I probably had a pretty quick case of influenza, which is a type of virus we'll talk about in the coming days. So it was pretty interesting for that to have that timing. But I got some meds. We'll talk about what those meds were when I come back. But I probably needed one more day just before I came back to really let the meds do their job and feel back to 100%. So I didn't want us to waste a whole nother day. I did grade your guys' cells test. Those will be in the grade book by tomorrow morning, hopefully. I might wait to put them in. There was one or two questions that were bad, and then a few of you guys kind of messed up the diagrams, and we'll talk about those. I thought about having the sub given back to you guys, but I figured it's a day I should be there for. So you'll get those back tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be back on Tuesday. For now, though, we're just going to keep moving on into cells like we talked about. So it is Valentine's Day. I will let you guys know that the sub report was awesome from Friday. When I came up to do my sub plans late Sunday night here, I was really pleased to see that, and know a lot of you guys are doing a great job, and I really appreciate that. So let's repeat that job today, which is Monday, and then I'll probably be able to get you guys some Valentine's Day candy when I come back on Tuesday. So digging in here to cells, get those packets out. Feel free to press pause if we need to, but as we zoom in here, we spent the first part of class this last week talking about eukaryotic cells. We see that nucleus, we see all these organelles, and you guys know from this last week, this was mostly animal cells and plant cells that we talked about. And you guys did a nice job on your test. A few of you guys, I think, just got a little dizzy on the diagrams. But now we're going to move into something much smaller. And although they're simpler, they're probably a little bit more critical for our health in the world, and that's prokaryotic cells. This is the stereotypical picture you guys will see, and we've talked about some of these parts, but clearly there's no nucleus, there's far less organelles, and you'll notice that there are a few different organelles that we haven't talked about here. There is a cell wall, there is a plasma membrane, there are ribosomes, but then there's a few other different pieces that you guys will dive into today. So if you guys flip on your notes to page 36, whoever my sub is, feel free to press pause for a minute. On page 36, we're not going to kind of go through the nitty-gritty. You guys are going to do a few of the basic things you know how to do on your own today. But when we look at prokaryotic cells in the world, they are flat out the most abundant organism on Earth. Okay, when I say that, what I mean is there are more prokaryotic cells than anything else on planet Earth. And if you think about why, the answer is that they're so small. If we think about COVID-19 particles and little bacterial cells, we know that in a little clump the size of a penny, there's hundreds of billions of bacterial cells there. So we'll get into these two different types of prokaryotic cells. There's archaea, which comes from the word archaic, which means ancient, and then the one you guys know a lot more, which is bacteria. So we'll get into those later. I didn't think those were good to do while I was gone. If you guys scroll down the page a little bit, though, you'll see that there are two different tables about how we name bacteria. So when you guys hear about bacteria in the news, sometimes you'll hear, oh, so-and-so has a staph infection, or there was an E. coli outbreak. Those are oftentimes not the scientific names for them, but it's what we use in the news and media to better understand them. What we're going to do is learn what those names come from, and then you guys are going to practice it today. You'll recognize a lot of these, and this is some nice problem solving, and it'll be refreshing for you guys to be able to understand what some of those articles are talking about. So when we name bacteria, the first thing we do is based on their shape. So there'll be three different shapes, and again, we'll need very powerful microscopes to see this, which doctors' offices and labs do, but they'll either be spherical, rod-shaped, which is a little bit longer and more oblong, or they'll be spiral-shaped. So, sub, feel free to kind of press pause and let the kids catch up as we need to, but if the bacterial cells are spherical in nature, meaning they're little circles, what we call that is cocci. If there's just one of them, it's coccyx, but otherwise it's cocci. So you can see down here, This is a single coccus bacteria. This is diplococci because they're spherical. And this is streptococci bacteria because they're all those little spherical ones. We'll learn about the other prefixes here in a minute. Okay, so cocci means spherical. Feel free to pause. Everyone, you should be writing the words and probably drawing good examples underneath. Okay. The next one is called rod-shaped bacteria, which we will call officially as scientists bacilli, or bacillus if there's just one of them. And that kind of comes from, I think, one of either the ancient Latin root or the Greek word. I can't remember, but bacillus will mean it's these longer rod-shaped ones. And you can see here just one of them is bacillus. When there's more than one of them, it's bacilli, and that's the plural version of it. So bacilli means rod-shaped. Feel free to pause. And then last, this is one. I'll have a really good story for you guys when I come back. But Augie and Bodie, we babysat a dog. I guess dog sat, not babysat, earlier this fall, and that dog ended up getting something called leptospirosis, and we were really worried about Augie and Bodie getting it. Leptospirosis is a type of spiral bacteria that infects the intestines of dogs, but if you see those spiral-shaped bacteria, that prefix is usually spirilli. Sometimes it's spirillum if there's just one of them, or spirilla. Okay, so that's pretty simple when you hear that, but that's part of how you'll name bacteria. So feel free to pause. Maybe you guys should probably turn to someone next to you and review them out loud with somebody and practice saying them on your own. And when we're ready, we're going to do the bottom 3 boxes. So feel free to pause and we'll roll. So like it says up here, the other thing we'll use to name bacteria is by their arrangement. And what that means is are they in big clumps? Are they in long chains? And they'll either be in clusters, in big clumps like grapes, they'll be in long chains, or they'll be in pairs. So the first arrangement is when they're in clusters, and that's called staff flow. I always tell kids when we have our staff meetings, all the teachers cluster up down in the auditorium, and you can see this picture right here. If you were to look under a microscope and see this bacteria is called Staphylococci because they're spherical bacteria and they're in big clumps. If you guys have ever heard of wrestlers or people getting staph infections after surgeries, this is the type of bacteria that grow in those wounds. So staphylo means they're in clusters. Feel free to pause and make sure you guys get a good picture and maybe write down some of those other analogies I'm using. Chains is when they're in big long chains, and this has never been a good one, but I've always said if a guy or a gal wears a chain around their neck, what sickness do you get in your neck or your throat? You get strep throat, and that's a dorky example, but it is what strep throat is. Strep throat is streptococcus bacteria in your throat, and that's why when you have strep throat at the doctor's office, they'll take a swab out of the back of your throat and check the culture for bacteria. That's how they figure out if you have strep throat or not. A lot of times your mom might look in your throat, and if she sees white clumps back there, that's streptococcus bacteria. This example right here is streptobacilli because you can see that they're rod-shaped, but it's in a long chain. Long chain means strepto. And you guys can tell the arrangement comes first and then the shape comes second. Lastly, this one's pretty self-explanatory. If the bacteria exist in plain old pairs, we call it diplo. And then obviously this one's diplobacilli because it's 2 rod-shaped bacteria. I think on my first slide right here I had diplococci because there was 2 of them, but that's how you name it in pairs. So now you guys are going to get a worksheet that says bacteria shapes on it. It's going to mix all these together, and you're going to have to do your best to draw them. You're going to look at the words, and if it says strepto, you're going to draw chains. If it says cocci, you're going to draw spheres, and you're going to go through those little by little. If you want to, you could definitely go online and check on pictures of that. But otherwise, you guys should kind of practice those things. And what we'll do as class goes on here is we will look at examples of those in the real world. And you guys will be able to tell that from now on, when you hear about E. coli and lettuce outbreaks, you'll know what that bacteria actually looks like. When you're done with that, you can flip it over, and there's a picture of a bacteria cell and different parts of it. And you guys will know a lot of those parts, but you're going to go define what the functions of those other new parts are. One of them is called the pili, or the pelices. There's the nucleoid, and there's going to be a couple other new parts. After about 20 minutes, you guys will come back together, and I have one more little short lecture, and then we'll end the day with an antibiotics video about bacteria. So get to work. You guys did a great job on Friday. Keep it rolling today. Work together, but you guys know your phone should be away. And let's get ready to rock and roll. Thanks for being awesome. See you guys in a little bit.